Thank you all so much for having me. It's wonderful to be at Bang Bang Con. I am a programmer and a project manager, as you just heard. So I notice edge cases, right? That is just part of the occupational hazard, right? Of being one of us. Is someone says there are rules, here are the rules. You notice instantly there is a possibility that one conditional will intersect with another, will intersect with it. But what if 0.01% of these people already have Mastodon accounts? And if someone tries to say, here's the common case, here's the common flow of how people will come into this system and what they're going to try to do, it's hard because I can only perceive sometimes what goes off to the sides, right? And their words end up dying in this conversation like a log going through a buzzsaw. And this doesn't just show up with computer stuff, right? It's everywhere I perceive. Let's talk about the New York State Consolidated Vehicle and Traffic Law. Just as an example, Title VII, Rules of the Road, Article 34B, Riding Horses, Section 1261, traffic laws apply to persons riding or leading horses. Fair enough, but there's no definition of horse. And there's a place for it too. It would be in Title I, words and phrases defined between Section 118 highway and 119 house coach. What? So does this apply to camels? What about mules? I mean, what about the Trojan horse, huh? What if I brought that and wheeled it in? Now, there is Article 23, obedience to and effect of traffic laws, Section 1105, traffic laws apply to persons riding animals or driving animal-drawn vehicles. But they never define horse as an instance of class animal. I guess we're just supposed to assume that. Now, okay, I'm going to guess this is approximately never actually a problem for the law enforcement apparatus of the state of New York, and it's probably not worth paying the lawyers to find some biological classification of horse to put into the statute, but they do have a definition of ice cream. Because in Title III, Article 9, Section 375, there's motor vehicles engaged in retail sales of frozen desserts directly to consumers, ice cream trucks. And as used in this subdivision, frozen dessert shall mean ice cream, frozen custard, French ice cream, French custard ice cream, artificially sweetened ice cream, ice milk, artificially sweetened ice milk, fruit sherbet, non-fruit sherbet. It goes on and on. It covers frozen yogurt. It covers things I've never heard of. And any products which are similar in appearance, odor, or taste to such products, or are prepared or frozen, as frozen desserts are customarily prepared or frozen, whether made with dairy products or non-dairy products. So they're covering their bases with ice cream trucks, but Secretariat and Mr. Ed are not going to get carved out. Right? And so why define one of the difference? The only difference I can assume is that horses never file lawsuits. Because with ice cream, you get this painstaking list of exceptions and non-exceptions. Yes, this actually covers you. And it feels like you got to assume every single one of those represents a well, actually. Every single one. The difference between code and law, and there is a difference actually, is in what happens when something is undefined at runtime. In code, it blows up or it causes silent data loss. In law, they say, all right, smart guy, and they figure it out. They figure it out at runtime. Maybe they end up looking in precedent, which is their Stack Overflow. And then they just do a dependency injection for the next run. And so it bothers me to see this seeming gap and vulnerability in the legal code, but it's not probably actually a problem. And that edge case thinking, it's this occupational hazard I don't think I ever got warned about in a CS class. I think they don't necessarily even really warn you about it at the Recurse Center. It's like being a rules lawyer with board games, but it applies not just to laws and rules, but to all aspects of your environment and any plan anyone ever tries to make. I hang out with a lot of nerds, so board games come up a lot. It's structured social interaction, right? It's very appealing. But I mean, as a nerd, I can be a very literal person. So there's a big aspect of board games that I struggle with, which is trash talk. For those of you who don't know this term, at least in the United States, when you're playing a game in a competitive manner with friends, there's a cultural practice of trash talk, which is playful insults offered among players that are meant to express comfort and camaraderie and creativity while firing up the competitive spirit, you know? And so like in a physical sport, you might say, hey, what you slow, you know, why you're so slow? What you waiting for? Your shoes made out of concrete? Okay, actually, I'm not good at making these up. I'm sorry. I care about telling the truth and being compassionate. And I don't usually insult people. So when I try to imagine and come up with trash talk, I have some failure modes, one of which is I just end up acting like a manager giving genuine feedback. Hey, you're slow because you keep looking for the perfect move instead of a good enough one. And other than that, you're doing great. You know, I think you're hitting your quarterly goals really well. And we could actually talk about a bonus at your next one-on-one. Or I just veer, like I'm trying to be like, all right, come on, I gotta get into it. So I accidentally err on the side of being genuinely cruel. Like, hey, it's really unlikely you'd win this anyway because you're bad at adapting to new circumstances. And that seems like a deep-seated issue going back decades. That's unlikely to change. No, I'm not gonna do that to anybody. So okay. Well, maybe I try and go for like a reference, you know, but I get way too in the weeds on details. Huh? When are you going to make your next move, huh? What you waiting for? Are you waiting for Vikram Seth to publish A Suitable Girl, his long-awaited sequel to his award-winning epic A Suitable Boy? You're not? You've never heard of that? That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for that because he first announced it in 2009, and then in 2016 he even had to give back in advance to the publisher because he didn't deliver the manuscript. And I mean, I understand why it's taking him so long. He had a breakup. He and his boyfriend, that's very difficult. And he's been involved in some activism around queer. Okay, so I realized I could have made this a more accessible reference in that last joke. Maybe people in this audience would have had an easier time if I said, well, are you waiting for George R.R. Martin to finish A Song of Ice and Fire? But I've actually never read those books. I have to keep it real. That's the fifth social rule, actually, keep it real. I think pretending you've read a book that you haven't, it might be against the code of conduct. I had to check. Are computers maybe better at trash talk? I'd be curious, for those of you who play a lot of video games, when you're playing against a computer, how good is it at taunting you, right? Was that something they tested with AlphaGo? You know, and all those like... Go and chess matches. You are so bad at this that you should stop trying. Exception, you suck. Error, object, player has no attribute, skill. Right? Is that what they're doing? I mean, like, I do think AI could be better than we are at like finding loopholes and rules lawyering, because what is an error message but the ultimate well actually? But the advantage that we as humans bring when we're trying to, or accidentally being very pedantic about and bringing to a screeching halt an idea that someone else has, is how imaginative we can be in blocking reasonable ideas with improbable counterfactuals. Right? Hey, so we're just trying to, you know, make our first plan for what our roadmap would be. What's the core idea of this thing that we might make together that runs on reasonably widely used browsers and operating systems here in consensus reality? But what if we need to be backwards compatible with an operating system that was last released on a Nirvana promotional CD? We have this habit, this thing that creeps into us from all the debugging and all of the future proofing, and it turns us into people who, when other people are just trying to grow delicate new ideas, we end up pouring bleach into the Cambrian tide pool. Sorry, that wasn't funny. That was just real. I had to keep it real. Fifth social rule. My spouse has to watch out for this. He says whenever he works on parsers, he gets grouchy and nitpicky just in general. So he tries to save that work for when I'm not around. He's like, all right, I'm just going to go into the fortress of parser solitude now. And just be grouchy while I work on nitpicky things. You go, frolic with animals. By the way, so my spouse, one reason why he has to deal with parser things sometimes is that he is Leonard Richardson, and he created the Python screen scraping library, Beautiful Soup. Beautiful Soup is really useful. It's a tool that makes it easy to grab data programmatically from a website, regardless of whether the owners of that website are super into you doing that. It's very punk rock, right? And a lot of times, I'm just gonna, let's see. Hey, well, I don't want to take a second to look at Discord, but in Discord, are people like, Beautiful Soup?
We're on a delay, so there they go. All right, I think it just hit the live stream. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That is, it's what I've come to expect. Basically, when I mention at a tech conference that I am married to the Beautiful Soup creator and maintainer, people have a kind of bewildered adoration, right? It's like I'm Mrs. Santa Claus. They say, your spouse made Beautiful Soup. That was the first programming project I ever made used Beautiful. I was 6 years old and I needed a bus scheduler. Or I built my career on Beautiful Soup. My company wouldn't exist without Beautiful Soup. My government won a war with Beautiful Soup. Will you tell him? Will you thank him for me? Will you hug him for me? I mean, I'm gonna hug him. That's a thing I regularly do. I guess I'll just add that metadata to our next hug. Like, co-authored by. By the way, Leonard is also a leading expert on web API design, application programming interfaces. He wrote the book on RESTful web APIs. It's called RESTful web APIs. And that is a particular philosophy of how to create APIs. If you're a website owner and you're interested in giving people programmatic access so they don't have to scrape your website to get that data, then you can read his book and that'll help you do that, so you can provide that properly. But if you don't, well, Beautiful Soup is out there. It's like if the CEO of Goodwill was also secretly Robin Hood. He also, because of being a domain expert on API design, at one point he was giving a talk about this topic in general, and along the way he realized it would be useful to say, well, whether or not an API is RESTful, is in accordance with the REST programming philosophy, that's it's not yes or no, it's kind of a spectrum. And so he laid out, well, if it has this attribute or that attribute, it might be more or less RESTful. And then several months later, someone wrote an article pointing to that offhand sidebar part of his talk and called it the Richardson maturity model with capital letters. And you fast forward several years, and now if you look on SlideShare and similar slide deck sharing parts of the web, you can find marketing slide decks that advertise that a particular API is RMM level 3 compliant. And this is all very embarrassing for Leonard, by the way. Imagine you're just like a biochemist and you're just trying to keep bananas ripe longer or something. And along the way, you're like, it would be nice if we could tell an acid from a base. And then people start calling it the litmus test. They're like, Dr. Litmus, will you autograph my test strips? Okay. In rehearsal, I found out I had nerd sniped someone in the audience who got distracted from like the next minute of material because they went on Wikipedia to check whether litmus tests are named after a real person. They're not. They're not. Litmus comes from an Old Norse word for pulp. So please close that. You can close that tab. And in order to be responsible, I'm deprecating this joke. Please do not rely on this joke being present in future versions of this act. It comes with a warning in this version, and then it will be removed for the next release. It is really humbling to actually look up ancient scientists and engineers, these days. A few years ago, I ran across the word catenary, and I asked Leonard, what's a catenary? And he, came into the bedroom and emerged. He held a cord. He held one end of a cell phone charger cord high in each hand. And he said, this is a catenary, the shape a hanging cord or cable describes when its ends are held up, but gravity pulls down the weight of the cord itself. And I said, oh, so it's a parabola. He said, actually, no. And I looked it up. Galileo claimed that a catenary would be a parabola. But this was disproved by Jungius in a work published in 1669. And I said, I am so wrong. I was proved wrong in 1669. But my spouse is so supportive. And he pointed out, well, on the other hand, you're as good as Galileo. This is what it's like to be constantly trying to learn, is that you fail, but you can comfort yourself with the company you're in as long as you are very good at moving the goalposts. Leonard did okay this material, even though he's a pretty private person, although what it means to be a private person has definitely changed. Security conscious people care about privacy, but different people who care about cybersecurity draw the line in wildly different places, right? This person over here will publish their phone number so you can contact them on Signal, but they'll never publish a photo of where they are until 24 hours later. If you were ever on LiveJournal, maybe you remember someone who live blogged their sex life, but you never got to know their legal name, right? People decide, all right, this bit of my life, it's probably going to enter the public anyway at some point. So you know what? I'll just be pre-doxed for your convenience. It's the you can't fire me, I quit of digital privacy. My family, when I was growing up, they would say, what will people think? What will the neighbors think? Well, these are people who've decided, why should that be a rhetorical question? Let's just resolve the superposition of that uncertainty right now, and then we'll know. Me mentioning LiveJournal, for some of you, this is a blogging service that was most popular in the 2000s. And for some of you, I have taken you straight back to 2003 and how many icons you had. I was thinking about, speaking of, 20 years ago, I was thinking about how much spam has changed, because seeing the rise of AI, GPT and Copilot and all these things that can auto-generate text, I've been thinking about the first time I ever ran into auto-generated text I could really, really tell was auto-generated. Because in about 2003, I started getting spam with really weird subject lines, right? They just try just a little bit to pass the Turing test. Okay, what are things that humans say to each other? You left your umbrella. The server is down. That's the subject line, but you open the mail and it has nothing to do with servers or umbrellas. It's like a child playing peekaboo, right? I never got, a Blade Runner type experience of a phony digital consciousness being created and seeded just to sell me and to trick me and sell me something. You left your umbrella. Okay, where did I leave my umbrella? If I hit reply, what do I get? You left it on the train. Okay, thank you. How can I get it from you? Buy the pills. At least give me a few steps. It's kind of insulting towards us, the humans, that they would never get to that level. I remember the most plaintive ones, right? Where the last word of the subject line was complete nonsense of a key smash string generated afresh for each email, because then the spam filters couldn't tell because it was a unique string each time. And they can say, oh, we've just seen that before. The one that did seem to indicate that it is really no fun being a spam AI was a subject line that said, I didn't say it would be easy. I only said tool replicals. Right now in November 2022, we are at this AI inflection point, right? Where things are taking off, and a year from now, we'll have so much more capability and new products and platforms and so on than we do right now. I have this product idea for Amazon, which is an ebook that just generates more book. You think you've gotten to the last chapter, and then another one. So you only need to buy it once, right? They could call it Kindle Truly Unlimited. I'm just waiting for all these tools to get good enough that I could deep fake myself so I can sleep. Because it's, what I do in life is mostly the typey. And that is precisely what these AI tools are excellent at, is being like, what if a human went typey, right? They're not even going to be loud, so they're not going to annoy somebody with the noise of the mechanical keyboard. Even though they're the ultimate mechanical keyboard. And, they're not going to annoy somebody. They're not going to be annoyed. But just like an AI can't be annoyed, an AI can't actually be sympathetic, right? It can fake it. Eliza, as the psychiatrist bot from, 50 years ago now, right? Could kind of fake a certain kind of sympathy, but an AI cannot, in my opinion, have sympathy. At least the ones that I know about. And that is one thing that I feel when I notice those edge cases that I keep talking about, right? Is when I notice, but what if this happens? I actually feel a bit protective of it, right? It's like a lost kitten. I think that it needs feeding and taking care of, right? Because I think this is an emotional reaction I have, and maybe you do too, to protect edge cases we notice so that things don't fall through the cracks. We feel like, well, I was once lonely and people didn't understand me and take care of my needs because I didn't fit in to their preconceptions of how things were going to go. And so that can come into, how we take care of our code and each other. And I realize that's not necessarily the most jokey thing to say. It's a little bit more earnest. But I think that's at least, somewhat in keeping with what Bang Bang Con is supposed to be about the emotional experience, the visceral experience of programming. And I never said that all of this set would be funny. I only said, tool shots. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bang Bang Con.